Hi, it's me again, and I'm here at the office of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. And anyway, I wanted to talk again about House Joint Resolution 5, HJR 5 to its friends. And for those of you who aren't acquainted with the issue, there is an amendment on Idaho's general election ballot next Tuesday that proposes a constitutional amendment. And that amendment says that the legislature shall have the ability going forward to be able to review, approve, or reject agency regulations known as administrative rules. Now, this has become somewhat controversial, and I'm extraordinarily passionate about it, and that's the reason why I keep going on Facebook Live to talk about it. And when I put the little notification that I was doing this video, I said, that's because I have a secret I want to share. And the secret's this. I used to work in state government. Yeah, a lot of my longtime friends will remember the brief time that I worked in state government. But yes, I worked in the State Department of Agriculture for around 18 months. The most miserable 18 months of my life, but I persevered. And this is why I'm telling you this. And you're asking a question, well, why? What does this have to do with HJR 5? Here's what it has to do with this. When I worked at the State Department of Agriculture, like a lot of agencies, the State Department of Agriculture, yes, Dustin, I know I was not supposed to tell anybody, but when I was at the State Department of Agriculture, I was in charge of the agency's outreach to the state government on behalf of the department director, Pat Takasugi, who died a few years ago. Anyway, Pat wanted me, because I had a lot of interactions with both the media and with state legislators, to be part of that discussion when it came to dealing with agency legislation and also agency regulations. Here's the dirty little secret. Agencies hate the fact that they have to take all these regulations they've written and bring them down to the Capitol, where a bunch of senators and representatives sit in judgment of their very good work. HJR 5 would make sure that that process remains in place. For those of you who are sitting out there thinking that somehow voting against HJR 5 is a valuable blow in defense of freedom, it is not. If you vote against HJR 5, if HJR 5 does not pass, I can almost guarantee you there will come a point sometime in the future when Idaho's legislative process for reviewing agency regulations will go away. Now, who would be most offended by that? Well, people like us, like you and me, who are able to go to our legislators and ask for help when an agency passes some dumb rule. Who would most benefit when HJR 5 fails? The governor, who is now opposed to HJR 5, and the Attorney General, who is also opposed to HJR 5. And I understand also, although I asked the Supreme Court if this was true, I read a blog post, or I'm sorry, a comment on Facebook by Lori Otter that claimed that Justice Burdick on the state Supreme Court is opposed to HJR 5 as well. I asked the court, they said that Justice Burdick hasn't made any public declarations or other comments about HJR 5, so I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly the court doesn't want HJR 5 to pass either. And the reason for that is because the court wants to retain its ability to examine Idaho's Administrative Procedures Act and all the various lawsuits that may or may not come from that. So, yes, the court might be opposed to it. The governor's office has reason to oppose it, because the governor is not a conservative and does not support liberty. And the Attorney General has reason to oppose it because his agencies have deputy attorneys general that work for him who help write these regulations. So, of course, they have some objection to HJR 5. Here's the point. I know a lot of you received a flyer in the mail, or received several flyers in the mail in support of HJR 5. And I saw one of my friends on Facebook yesterday contending that the special interest groups, the lobbying organizations, are in support of HJR 5, so there must be something awful and evil and terrible about it. No, that's not true. Now, I understand there's some skepticism of organizations generally, but these organizations also represent real people who are impacted by agency regulations, like the Department of Agriculture that I worked for, where one day it's perfectly legal for you to generate a gallon of milk from a cow, and the next day some bureaucrat decides to reinterpret a state statute so that it's not legal to generate a gallon of milk from a cow. That's what HJR 5 is all about, is making sure that the legislature continues to have the authority to examine those regulations. And no one would like more to stop that than a liberal governor and a liberal attorney general. Sorry to my friends in those offices, but that's the fact of the matter. If you want to really strike a blow on behalf of freedom, on behalf of liberty, and help real people out there who are impacted by dumb government regulations, I highly recommend that you vote in favor of HJR 5. I'm doing it. In fact, I voted for HJR 5 yesterday. I'm proud to have done so. It's a good piece of legislation. Our state constitution will be improved by virtue of its inclusion, and I hope that you will again take the opportunity to ask questions about HJR 5. Don't just listen to the naysayers and the people that are trying to figure out how to create innuendo and conspiracy theories about this legislation. It is good public policy. And what is Ben Wilson telling me here? As long as you can abuse the... okay, you're funny. Listen, if you have the ability for your state senators and your state representatives to review administrative rules, state government regulations before they take effect, you are much better off, and freedom is better served by virtue of having it. I hope you'll consider voting in favor of HJR 5 if you haven't done so already on the November ballot, November 8th, Tuesday. And if you have questions, again, you can always email me, Wayne@idahofreedom.org. Thank you again.